time, we are looking at Lagoonies from Kosmos. This is for 2 to 4 players, 5 and up. It takes about 20 minutes, and it is basically a matching game with a whole bunch of additional production layered on. It's very interesting, and it's very pretty to look at. So before we talk about it too much in depth, why don't we take a look at the game, show you how it plays, and we'll jump back in here and get your opinions. All right, guys, here we have Lagoonies, and I'm going to show you how we put it together. I try not to overdo the setup time because that can be a boring part of the video, but I think for kids games, family games in particular, it's helpful to see just what all goes into putting these games together. So I'm going to walk you through it. So first things first, I've dumped everything out of the box. We're going to combine these two pieces. This is what you have. Basically, once it's punched and ready to go, these are the things you have to do when your kid says, I want to play Lagoonies. So this is what you're looking at. So we got to combine this. Jam that little bit in there. One of those things probably not to let your small children do. You don't want to get ripped. So you got that set up. I'm going to drop this down here in the middle. All right. Then you are going to take these little dudes, all your little Lagoonies in pieces, dump them out. Got the die, set aside the stars, and then we're going to put out all these little dudes. Now that you're supposed to match them up to the different pieces here. So like I'm just throwing them down so I can give you an example. This is the part I don't want to bore you with, but you're basically just covering up all these different spots. No overlapping pieces. You want to make sure that they're all independently listed out here. Okay. Promise it doesn't take as long as it looks, but this game does have a fair bit of setup time, so be prepared for that. It's not just pull it out and play it like you might like with a lot of kids games. So you get those all covered up, then you take this guy, we drop this on top here. It snaps into the box as such. It doesn't matter if these move too much, you'll see why in a second, but you know, try to keep them on there. Then we cover up all of these holes. So again, you can see how this is starting to take a little bit of time. It's not the end of the world, but it is a little slower than you might like, and the kids are impatient. All right, and then last but not least, we take this octopus and we shove him down here. All right, so the game is more or less ready to go. Now, what you're going to be doing is we're going to be rolling this die, and we're going to be turning this, the number shown. So it shows we're turning 2, so we're going to turn 1, 2, and it kind of snaps to that, so you don't have to try to count it too much. So what you get here then is, and I'm trying to zoom in here a little bit so you can see what I'm looking at, is there on the board, it's showing you one of the little Lagoonie dudes. Now, on the rule book, I believe somewhere, it lists their names, but otherwise there's no real way to know who these people are. They're all the same color, and while they're slightly different shapes, I find that the children don't necessarily distinguish between them all too well, especially not the younger ones. So this is one of those things that if you're playing with 5-year-olds, you might have a little bit of trouble. It is a matching game, but most of the time when you're matching, you want them to be slightly more different. We'll get more into that later, though. So what you're going to be doing then is everybody's going to have their little stars. If you play with 3 or 4 players, you get 1 each. If you play with 2 players, you each get 2. And now you look for this guy, you look around, and you say, I think he's here. And then someone else says, I think he's here. Someone says, I think he's here. And I think he's here, right? And then you take turns, and you go through, and you pull off the top, and you see if he is, in fact, there. So this one, there was 2. Good job, red. You take those. Yellow had none. Yellow failed. Green had 1. Good. And blue had none. Now you can pull them out of here from the corners. Oh, blue has 1, because you can kind of pry them out of there. It doesn't matter if they move from their starting points. It is a kid's game, so we're pretty careful here. everybody has their own corners. So then you put them in your corners where they go. And once you fill up your stack, I think it's 9 it takes to fill it up, the game is over. And that's basically it. You move it around, you turn, you do it again, and you're just trying to get until you hit that 9 number. Now, the board can get bumped. So if you're playing this on the floor and someone does this, that's no fun. Sometimes you can open one of these and there's not much there. My big meaty fingers often have times pulling stuff out of the corners. You can push it back. Kids don't really have that problem as much though, so it's not really a huge issue. But yeah, there you have it. That's Lagoonies. That's the basics of how to play. And we'll jump back and tell you Lagoonies. Now, as you can see, this game is basically a matching game to some degree. You are trying to find certain things based on what you turn, and then you are hopefully collecting those things and getting the most of them. Now, the interesting thing here is that the production is kind of ridiculous. Not in a bad way, just like there's a lot going on here that didn't necessarily need to be here, but it's very cool. Now, the 3 factors that I look at when I'm talking about a kid's game are how easy is it to set up and teach and play through, what is it like for the adults, and what is it like for the child. So, set up and play through. Getting this game ready takes a bit of time. If this is a game you just picked up and you're going to punch out and play it, do it the night before. It takes 20, 30 minutes to get everything out, learn the rules, set it up. It's a bit much for a kid's game. It's not ready to go out of the box. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's good to know that. You can kind of tell by looking at the back. There's a lot going on here. None of that is set up when you get it. So make sure you're ready. And make sure you kind of run through and understand the physical mechanisms of it too before you play. It's not fully intuitive until you do it. All right. As for the rules themselves, they're pretty straightforward. You saw how it plays. It doesn't take a whole lot of work to teach a kid. You know, you turn this, you look through the little lenses here, you fish around with your little fingers, and you hope to find the guys. That's it. That's what you're trying to do. Pretty straightforward. I had no trouble teaching it. Nobody had trouble picking it up. From a physical perspective, clumsy children, young children might knock things around, bump the board. It can make it a little more complicated. You definitely want to be able to play this at a table. Don't play it on the floor. And small children, probably don't let them play with the pieces at all because they're going to want to take these little bubbles off. My daughter was running around with them doing God knows what. So make sure that you have a good space for this. Make sure that your kids can sit still for the 15 minutes it takes to play and that they understand the rules and the basic idea of it. Most children can do that by 5, 6 years old, but definitely something to keep in mind. In terms of the adult play experience, it's fine. It's not particularly engaging. It's definitely not difficult. Big fingers make it harder, I guess, so you can't fish from the edges quite as well when you open those lenses up. Most of the work here, though, for adults is setting it up and keeping the kids calm and organized. It's not the kind of game where you can be fully engaged with it, and the luck element is pretty much not there. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Now, what do the kids think? The X factor, the most important part of any review when we're talking about children's games. What do they think? They weren't super impressed. And I'll tell you why, at least why I think that's the case. And I talked to my son and asked him, but I think it's just the basic idea of the game is very, very simple, but there's all these layers of production layered on top of it. And they basically turn this relatively simple matching game into a toy, which is good. I mean, sometimes it's fun. You want them to have fun doing it, especially if they're learning something or engaging. But it's also kind of difficult at the same time because these little tadpole things that are floating around, they look pretty similar to each other. So more often than not, my son would fish out one of the pieces that he thought was supposed to be the right one, and it was the wrong one. And that's disappointing. And they don't look different enough. They need to be different colors and much different shapes. Whatever it is, they're all the same color. They're slightly different. The names of them are written on the cover, so you can't even say, go find Bob, because you're like, this is Bob, look here, this is Bob, go find Bob. It just doesn't do enough to really draw out the differences and guide a child through this process. At least that's in my opinion. So is it a good game? Yes. I mean, it's well produced. It's much more interesting than just like a tile matching game or some of these very basic matching games. You throw stuff on a floor or a table and just poke around. I was more engaged on that level. It's cool to look at. It's cool to play with. Got a great toy factor. The kids, though, at the end of the day, just weren't super impressed. I feel like they just need something a little bit simpler, a little more straightforward, more intuitive with some of these things that, you know, adults maybe don't think of, but as a child, there's like, I can't tell these things apart, or I'm not paying enough attention, or I was distracted, or I bumped the board and now everything's moved and now I'm crying. I got to give this one a dodge, unfortunately. It just doesn't really capture the things that we're looking for in a children's game, and it just lacks the kind of flow and playthrough and ease of use that generally means a game's going to be a good fit for the children. So, unfortunately, Lagoonies is a dodge. If some of those factors don't sound like they're going to be a problem for your child, you know, give it a go. Make sure, you know, check and see if this is the kind of game that your kids are going to like. It is cute. The artwork is silly. You can see all these different characters. They're funny. You got all the different, the bubbles and stuff. The kids love to run around with the bubbles. The magnifying aspect of it is pretty cool. The kids really did like that a lot, being able to look through the bubble and see the tadpoles in there. But at the end of the day, the game was not a success in this family. So I'm going to have to go ahead and give Lagoonies a dodge. All right. So that's everything for this BGA at the Table review, Family Edition. Make sure you check out all the other reviews on the channel right now. We have lots and lots of different reviews we've been putting up lately of different family games on all sorts of different subjects. So that's everything for this time. Until next time, enjoy.